I thank you again, everybody, for joining us. The kickoff of Commodore the Next Generation. Very happy to have Jessica with us. Jessica's my friend from Chicago. We see each other every year at the Vintage Computer Festival, so that's how I met Jessica. And it's natural that every year I'm meeting some really passionate programmers and engineers and enthusiasts and trailblazers. So this is the concept that formed Commodore the Next Generation. Um, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce Jessica Petersen. One last thing, when I saw her in Chicago, um, showed me her Light Cycles game. She had all her machines hooked up, the Commodore 64, the VIC-20, and the PET, um, and got to play Light Cycles on all three that weekend. And Jessica was one of the names that I kind of drafted in thinking about who would represent the next generation. So, welcome, Jessica. Thank you for joining us.
All right. Thank you, Nico, for the introduction, and thanks for having me on.
My pleasure.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I've got a small presentation set up. Okay, so the overall topic of my presentation will be how to convert a basic program into Turbo Rascal syntax error, which is a newer language that is based on Pascal, and it is a compiled language, and it actually compiles to machine code. So before I get into that, I guess I'll just introduce myself. I'm uh I'm one of those people that from a young age always had like an interest in learning how things worked, especially like electronics and computers. And the first computer I ever used was actually a Commodore PET in the very early 80s. And later on, I got my own Commodore 64, which I used for many years. And then in the 90s, kind of moved to PC. And then in the late 90s, I discovered what we would call now the vintage community. That was the Swap Expo in 1998. So that was my first experience meeting people from this community. And I've been to the Chicago Expo almost every year since then.
So, the PET was your first computer.
The first one I ever used. Um, my father would take me to work with him sometimes,
Mm.
and I was able to use the computers they had in his office, which were pets at that time. And so I was maybe like 8 or 9 years old and playing Space Invaders on the pets and learning to use like very simple like basic commands and things. So from that point on, I think I was hooked.
Awesome.
Yeah. So here's a few links to my I have a HIO page for software that I've written and my GitHub. Now about Turbo Rascal, it has this the official name is Turbo Rascal syntax error, and I guess it's kind of an inside joke because that's like the error if you try to run a program that's missing the end statement. Yeah, this language it's a fairly new development by some folks from the demo scene in Europe, and it's under continual development. They just released a new version this year in January, and it's available for Windows, Linux, or Mac. It's a cross compiler, and it supports just about every 8 or 16-bit machine that's out there. Here we have some links. If anyone wants to check it out, it's a free download. And it's a combined IDE as well as the compiler and assembler. So it's kind of like everything all together. Although you will need emulators for all the systems that you plan on developing for, so that once you run the compiler and it can automatically launch your program and run it inside the emulator, which is very handy.
Which emulator do you like?
I use Vice.
Okay.
Okay, so this is kind of like an overview of how I would convert a basic program to TRSE. So basically, you just extract the basic PRG to a file, and Vice comes with a utility called petcat that you can use to convert the basic program into a text file. So once you have the text version of your program, I would just copy that into TRSE as commented lines, and then kind of refactor it. You break it into logical functions, and then line by line, convert that code into Turbo Rascal code. And when you're done, you just remove the basic lines. And this is the process I followed for my Light Cycles game, because I originally wrote that in BASIC on the PET. Um, it was a project that was started last year at the Midwest Gaming Classic. And I wrote it in BASIC, and while it worked, I found that it was simply too slow. So I started looking into alternatives, other ways. I looked into compiling it. I didn't really find any effective compilers for BASIC. And then I started looking at other languages. I considered rewriting the entire thing in assembly. But before I did that, I found this language, Turbo Rascal, and that's what I eventually stayed with. Um, okay, so this is just some of my contact info. All right, so I'm going to close this, and you should now be seeing the Turbo Rascal IDE. Can anyone
which is
confirm?
it's an
Is that what
integrated
you're
development environment for people who don't know what that is.
for? Who don't know what is?
For people who don't know what an IDE is, it's an
Ah,
integrated development environment.
right, right. So it's integrated. So basically, everything is within this application. Okay, so what we're looking at here, this is the version 1. This is the basic code, not of my Light Cycles game. This is a basic program that I wrote a very long time ago, back in the 80s, and I was teaching myself BASIC at that time and learning how to um, use sprites and move things around on the screen. And I thought it would make a good test program. Okay, so essentially I extracted the basic program and I simply pasted this into Turbo Rascal as commented lines. So that's pretty straightforward. So you can see I'm doing some setup at the top. I've got a main loop here at 100. It checks some input, processes the directions, updates the screen, and then I have some sprite data at the end. So it's very straightforward. Okay, now this V2 file, this would be the first step in refactoring, where I've broken these areas into functions for the most part. I have a variable section, check input section, updating the state, updating the screen, and setup. And this is the main loop. So within the begin and end, that this will be your main loop for any program within Turbo Rascal. So this simply calls the setup function, and then it goes into an endless loop of checking input, updating state, and updating the screen. Now, it's not actually going to do anything because these lines are all commented out. Okay, so for the third version of my program, I've actually done this conversion. So what was formerly my basic variables, these are now Turbo Rascal variables. This is my sprite data array. This is where we check the input, and here I'm using wait 1 second. So I'm using one of the libraries within Turbo Rascal to read the keyboard, and I'll get into this a little more later. But Turbo Rascal has got a number of packages that can be included. So I can simply say use input key, and now this library is available where I can read the keyboard. Okay, so I'm checking. Someone is pressing up and down cursor key, and if shift is being pressed, so that controls the direction. And checking left to right, and again, I have to check shift because of the way the cursor keys are implemented on the Commodore. And the space key resets the position of the sprite. Okay, this is the update state. So in this case, it checks if there was a collision with the background. It flashes the border when that happens, and then it's going to reverse direction. It checks the maximum values for X and Y, and then it updates X and Y. And then let's see. All right, so there's a lot of edge cases here. If you're like at the top of the screen, the bottom of the screen. And then this is actually updating the sprite's position. And in this case, I'm doing it like using the poke command, which is let's say the most basic like way of doing it within Turbo Rascal, although there's a better way of doing it, which I will show you in a moment. And this is simply the setup portion, just clearing the screen. This is for the video memory, this is setting up the color memory, setting the screen, background, and border. See, this sets up the sprite. So I'm enabling one sprite. I'm setting the color, and it's a single color sprite, and it's expanded. Okay, and this part has not changed. So I'm going to actually run the compiler for this code. Okay, so this is the famous balloon sprite from the programmer's reference guide. And
oh man, that's awesome.
yeah,
What
so as we can
nostalgia.
see it, yeah, it's classic.
Classic.
Yeah. So as we can see it, this works, although it does tend to get stuck. But
Woo!
there's something lacking here. There's no gravity. It will simply bounce around forever. Now this is an improved version of my program. And I'm not going to run through this line by line because, well, for one thing, a lot of this is duplicated, and then also there's quite a bit that was added. So the most significant part that was added here is that I'm using the graphics library. So there's a line that bounces around the screen instead of having the solid bar. So all these variables are for controlling the position and movement of that line. Check input, it's pretty much the same. I've added a few more controls. And by the way, these files can be downloaded from the link that I shared in the chat if anyone wants to check it out.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, and I've added this draw line routine. So when this runs, it has a counter that will draw a sequence of lines on the screen and then wipe it and start over. This is logic to make the line move. And then this draws the line. So this simply calls the library file. Now we can view the graphics library. We can simply open it up on the left side here under C64 library, under GFX. And so it's very easy to review the source code of these external libraries. So in this case, I'm using line 2, and it's pretty straightforward. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and run this. But before I run this, there's one more thing I wanted to cover, and that's the physics. So this does have gravity enabled. And one major challenge that I faced with this is that Turbo Rascal does not have a floating point data type. It only has byte, integer, or string. So in order to make partial, or say fractional values, I found it necessary to multiply all my values by 10, basically adding a 0, doing all my mathematical work on the larger value, and then dividing it by 10 before I actually use it. So that kind of simulates a floating point number. Yeah, so for example, here, I've got the border right defined at 3030 plus 24, which, I mean, obviously is much higher than the Commodore 64's like horizontal resolution, but divided by 10 would be the proper place for the right border. So I hope I explained that correctly. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and run this. So this is the enhanced version, and it has gravity enabled right now. So gradually the
cool.
balloon will come to a stop, and I can disable gravity. So right now it will simply like bounce around forever unless it's turned back on. And if I press the L key, it should turn on the lines.
Sweet.
Yeah,
Look at
there it
that.
goes. So
Yeah.
it's kind of
love
fun
it.
just making it bounce off of that construct. Yeah, I mean, it is kind of funny. Sometimes it will get hung up like this, and then eventually just find its way free.
Incredible what a treasure that programmer's reference guide is still.
You're not wrong. Yeah, the programmer's reference is terrific. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe Leonard Trammell actually designed this sprite.
Yes, I believe you're right.
Yeah, I'm sure he he would have no idea at the time that we were still being used, some 40, 50 years later. Okay, so I think that was the main part of my presentation. Does anyone have questions about this?
Maybe check the chat.
What's that?
Okay, so
Maybe check the chat. I don't know what
Oh,
someone
everybody.
there's
said
some questions.
that's really cool. There's a game called Balloonasy 2. No, that was it.
Yeah, I could check the chat. Is there a way you could just keep the window, but shrink it a little? I love the meat and potatoes getting into the thick of this.
For
Um,
sure.
I can stop sharing.
well, no, I'd like for you to share, but can you minimize it?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure how to do that.
Okay, that's fine. You can keep it like that. Let's see. Did anybody ask any questions? Jess, Marcio, you guys can ask your own questions too, but here I'll read it. Marcio, Jessica, how much faster is TRSE compared to interpreted basic V2 and also compiled basic V2?
Okay, well, Turbo Rascal, I mean, it compiles to machine code, so it runs, much faster than interpreted basic. So I don't know, 100 times faster seems to be a ballpark figure. I'm not sure about interpreted because that can vary based on the compiler.
Uh, Stefan from Vienna, Austria. Thank you, Stefan, for staying up late. Uh, asks, that's really cool. There is a game called Balloonasy 2 that is also funny. Any idea about Balloonasy 2?
No, never heard of that one.
No. So Jess,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I asked you at the conference last year, but why Pascal?
Well, that's a good question. It's something I never actually programmed in before. I found this development software and it seemed to be a good fit. And I learned Pascal in the process of, you know, um, learning the language. So I wouldn't say that like Pascal itself was a goal of mine. It just happened to be what this language was. And I guess on that note, I think it's worth mentioning that the designer of Pascal, Nicholas Worth, he actually passed away recently. It was New Year's Day.
Oh, rest in peace.
Yeah. So at least it's pretty cool that, his legacy lives on in these new languages.
Yes, and I do recall in my collection I have a 5 1/4 floppy for Commodore 64, a Pascal title. It was an official Commodore publication, and it's actually still shrink wrapped. Do you remember this title?
I do. Yeah, I believe I may have had a copy of that in my collection at one point. Commodore published a whole series of languages for the 64. They had Forth, Pascal.
Mm.
I think they may have had like Fortran even, but I never used any of those back in the day.
So Stefan is asking, what games have you published? And well, Light Cycle, is this something that you can show us? Um, I played it. I had a lot of fun, and it's based on Tron. So I assume you're a Tron fan.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of my favorite movies from the 80s. Sure. Yeah, I can give a quick demonstration of my Light Cycles game. I'm actually working on a new version that will have more players and more bot players available because the first version it's only either 2-player or it's single player against the computer. So what I want to add is support for the 4-player adapter. So
Okay.
up to 4 human players could play, and theoretically up to 4 bot players. And so before I get into that, I wanted to show something real quick within Turbo Rascal.
Mhm.
So this is
Sure.
the selection menu for
Oh, sweet.
systems.
Okay.
Yeah, so we can see all the different systems
Yeah,
that you can develop for
that's what I'm
using
talking about.
this language.
Mega 65,
That's right. Yeah,
Game Boy. Look at that. Okay.
that's right. Yeah, it supports the NES, the SNES, the Spectrum.
Oh,
Sport.
Bill Hurd would be very happy to see the 128 there.
You would.
Where is it?
The Amiga is supported.
Oh yeah, which one?
Here's the 128. Um, it just has Amiga as a platform.
Oh, okay. Das is cool.
And okay, so I just opened up the tutorials for Amiga. Sample project. Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have an Amiga emulator installed, so I won't be able to run any of these. But this is something I've been meaning to look into.
But pet is certainly welcome.
Absolutely. And so within this IDE, once you select a system, they have tutorials for every system that it supports. So for example, this is the Commodore 64 samples. So they have like easy examples, more advanced, like this, Hello World, to let's try a more advanced one. Like they have like a sprite scroller. So I found these very helpful, like writing my own programs. Like if I want to learn how to do something, like if I want to learn how to like put a sprite on the screen, all I have to do is look at one of the examples and see like, oh, that's how it's done.
It's cool. And you know what's really cool? For everybody who's out there in internet land, this is hardware compatible. Just let me play these games on her real machines. Like when you're looking at this, it looks new, right? But it's backwards compatible.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, the IDE is modern, but yeah, the executables it creates, absolutely. You can take these and load them up on real hardware on a vintage machine and it will run.
Can you show
And
us
this
a pet example? What do you have for pet?
Sure. Well, there's my Light Cycles game.
Okay, cool.
So I'm just compiling it real quick.
There it is.
Yeah.
This was so fun and challenging. You can't collide, right? There you go. Player crashed.
Yep. So that was a program that I wrote for the pet. Now, if we look at some of the sample projects for the pet, let's see. This matrix demo, I think most people have seen this one by now.
Very cool. Yep.
Yeah. So it gives you the matrix screensaver.
I remember this one.
They
That's awesome. I love it.
Mm.
they did a plasma for the pet.
Pet
Very
ski.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, this language, it has a lot of
This is cool.
optimizations for creating demo effects. Some of these I haven't quite figured out yet how they work. This one I think is fairly straightforward. So it's building up a lookup table based on these values, and then it simply like iterates over a section of the screen, printing them. Okay, so right, so we were going to look at Light Cycles DX. So this is the new version that I've been
Okay.
working on for the 64.
Cool.
Yeah, so at this point, I've pretty much just I've got the title screen updated, but I haven't worked on the actual gameplay yet.
I love your intro screen.
Yeah, thanks.
It's so warm and fuzzy. Look at that. You got like a little bug. What is that
That's
supposed to be?
amazing.
What is that? What
Yeah.
is that?
Yeah, it's a bee.
It's a bee?
Yeah, there's a bug
Nice.
in my program.
I
There you
love
go.
it. Great.
I mean, doesn't this give you guys warm and fuzzy feelings?
Yes, very
Like,
yes. Love it. Oh man, that's amazing. I love
amazing.
it. Is that the links
Yeah.
that you provided to at the start of the chat, Jessica?
For this game, it's not published yet.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
The first version is published. I'll share the link for that one.
Okay, cool.
So, Jessica, you could continue showing us. I'll just ask you, what are some of your inspirational games growing up, like that still fuels your passion?
Oh boy, some of my inspirational games.
Yeah.
I guess I'd have to say, I mean, the classics. There's like Boulder Dash, Load Runner, Impossible Mission. Played a lot of Ghosts and Goblins, and
Sweet. Yeah.
yeah,
For the 64?
yeah, on
Or
the
any?
Commodore 64.
Okay. Boulder Dash, you said.
I'm just trying to think. I played so many games back then. My favorite RPG was Legacy of the Ancients. Did you ever play that one?
No. Which one? Which
Legacy
system?
of the Ancients?
Which computer?
Oh, on the Commodore 64.
Okay.
Actually, that's my favorite game too.
Yeah. It was a great game.
Nice.
It had like the 2D like world on the world map. And once you got into the dungeons, the dungeons were 3D.
You know they have a sequel for it, right?
Legend of Black Silver.
That's correct, yeah.
I played that
Nice.
one too, but I found it was not quite as good as the original.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I didn't know anybody knew about like City Ancients. I was surprised you mentioned that. That's like my favorite game.
Yeah, I think that actually someone is working on doing like a fan third game, fan made third game. But it's hard to say if that will ever see the light of day.
Ah, okay.
So I think I would have to say the game that has stuck with me the most, like since that time, is probably Impossible Mission. So it's such a well-made game that I find it still fun to play. Um, I don't know if anyone recalls the game, but basically you have to explore this underground area with like elevators. There's like puzzles to solve, and each room has these robots that zap the walls or zap the character. And it was one of the first games that I ever experienced that had like speech synthesis in it. So that blew my mind when I was a child. I heard the computer talking, and it just was so amazing.
Very
Which
cool.
what the magic voice on the 64?
No, not the magic voice, just the game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when it loaded, it would say, yeah, but what would it say? Stay a while, stay forever.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Another visitor. Stay a while. Stay forever. Yeah.
That reminds me of Deckard Cain in Diablo 2. Stay a while and listen.
Yeah,
That's cool.
there's some similarity there.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else? Any other questions? Um,
Oh,
what?
I
Sorry, go ahead.
was just looking at the IDE. Does it have any support for debugging? Like, can it hook into Vice and step through code, or is it just fire and forget?
That's a good question, and I'm not sure. It may have that functionality, and I haven't discovered it yet. But as far as I know, it doesn't tap into Vice. What I usually do for debugging is to print variables to the screen. Give me 1 second. I'm trying to find a place in the code. Okay, so this is how I typically debug. So I would simply like move to this area. Well, I could just show you. Right, so I'm going to activate this section of code. So this is within the B animation routine on the title screen. And it's just going to print out the X and Y location where the B is at. So it just moves to the location and then prints it and then prints the value. So now we've got the debugging output in the top left corner.
Oh, very cool. Thank you.
Sure. That reminds me, there was something I was going to show before. Whereas in one of the earlier versions of my demo program, I was poking registers. Well, there's an easier way to do that for many things. Turbo Rascal has these, it's like syntactic sugar, where instead of having to poke registers, you could just say set memory config to like, configure like how you want memory set up, set the set bank to set up the, the VIC video chip memory bank. And it has a lot of these like shortcut type functions. It also has it also has an integrated help system. So if I press F1 on my keyboard, it brings up the help screen. And this is pretty comprehensive. So we could search, let's say we wanted to find out set memory config, here it is. And it explains. So it
Nice.
takes 3 bytes, parameter 1s, 2, and 3, disables IO, kernel, and basic. And so it's very helpful. Like if you want to learn what each function does, you could simply go through the documentation. Let's see, and then say platform info. This is also very useful. So if we go into the variable section, it explains the different variable types that are available.
Marcio wants to know if you could set your audio out so we can hear the game audio. Is that possible?
I can try. I'm not sure how to do that. So when I was running the game before, you did not hear any audio?
No.
Oh, share sound. Okay.
Yeah, there was no audio until yeah, there was no audio.
Okay. All right. So I'm compiling again, and so hopefully you'll get audio now.
Okay, cool.
Is it coming through?
Yes.
Got it.
Love that collision sound.
This this reminds me of an Easter egg that I added to the original program. Would you like to see it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay, hopefully this works. So this will, I guess, be world exclusive because no one has found the Easter egg yet since I published the game.
Oh, sneaky, sneaky.
Yeah, so if you force your opponent to crash into the wall, you can drive through the wall and then access the Easter egg. Okay, so this is the original version of my game. I need to set keyboard control. This may take a moment.
Light cycles.
You know, I screwed that up. Okay, so I made it crash. I made him crash once. Now, the Easter egg is only triggered after you've made the opponent crash once. So this time it should work.
Uh-huh.
See if you recognize the song.
That's hilarious.
Anyone recognize it?
Yes.
Keeping up with the Commodore.
It sounds familiar.
Yes.
I just
Are
can't
you
put my
keeping
finger
up
on the
with the
name.
Commodore? Commodore's keeping up with you?
That's right. So this is actually a tribute to the Midwest Gaming Classic
That's awesome.
last year with the parking lot completely full of cars and you driving around forever trying to find a spot.
That's hilarious.
And you may notice the bee in the courtyard. That's representing the bees that were gathered around there. If anyone remembers.
The retro piece.
That's right.
I love it. Now, these libraries on the left, do those come with this? Or do you have to add those packages?
Nope. They come with the ID.
Okay.
Yeah, so under Global Library. Yeah. Yeah, it comes with it. And in order to use those, you just include them with the use command. And this system is, I mean, it's still under development. And I find that they're refining these and adding to them all the time. So, I mean, expect that these are going to change and grow over time.
And you said this was a good chance for you to learn, learn languages. And back in the day, I assume, correct me if I'm wrong, but were you typing out of magazines?
I absolutely was. Yeah. I spent many hours of my youth typing in magazines from Compute's Gazette, or sorry, typing in programs from Compute's Gazette. Yeah, other magazines like Ahoy and Compute. Whatever I could get my hands on, pretty much.
How do you compare those days with now and all this technology that we have? speaking about the next generation, how do you reconcile the past with now?
Well, I feel like things have changed so much since that time. I felt like when I was using my Commodore 64 back in the 80s, everything was so new and amazing. Like just being able to like type on the keyboard and watch characters appear on the screen was amazing at that time. And I think people like learning computers today, it's a completely different experience. Whereas I think they probably, most people would just regard it as like a magic box. Like, how does it work? Who knows? It's a black box. But, back at that time, I don't know, it was more of like an understanding that this, was like electronics and, you know, these integrated circuits that tie it all together. So it does seem like, we've kind of like gotten away from like the sense of wonder about like a home computer, and now it's more just like an appliance.
Right. It's something that becomes obsolete, right?
Yeah.
Like Sony today saying that the PS5 is now in the last stage of its life cycle, right? Now it's all just throw it away, get a new one, it fits in your pocket. Different
Yeah,
times.
yeah, Apple's like that too, pretty much.
Hmm.
They keep on upgrading and upgrading until like you can't upgrade anymore, and there's nothing else you can use on it. So you're like forced to to get something new, or else suffer any security vulnerability consequences. Unless you like really skilled in Unix and can modify it, or you can put Linux on it or whatever. Um, but not many people know how to do that. So you know, but yeah, it's totally different now for sure.
Yeah. There's definitely an upgrade treadmill now.
So just between the PET and the 64, you had a VIC-20, right?
I do now. I never had a VIC back in the day.
Yeah. It's my first computer. What do you think about the VIC? And
I love it.
yeah,
Yeah, I really enjoy like the VIC-20's like screen, the big like chunky characters, and I think it's it's very well suited for certain types of games. And I kind of wish that when Commodore came out with the VIC-2, I wish they had added support for the original VIC-1 modes because, you know, there's a lot of VIC-20 games and things that simply don't translate well to the 64. And I think the VIC, I think is a great computer. I wish they'd added a little more RAM to it because like the small amount of RAM it was given kind of limited like the possibilities.
hmm.
No kidding.
But
But it's still a beautiful little machine. Jessica Marcio wants to know, does your retro computing hobby also include collecting and using actual vintage computers or FPGA recreations?
Um, yeah, I absolutely do collect vintage computers. So when I got back into you know Commodore computers in the late 90s, I had my Commodore 64, and then I added a 128, and then I quickly I think got a VIC-20, and I wanted to learn all about these different systems, and then eventually I got a Spectrum, and then like a Tandy color computer, and then Amigas. So at this point, I feel like my collection is pretty much complete as far as what I have room to store.
What about your mini pet? Is that FPGA?
No,
Oh,
no,
that's an
that
actual pet chip.
it's an actual pet that's re-implemented using TTL logic. Here, give me one moment. I'll bring it to the camera.
Yeah, Marcio, I got to see it in Chicago, at her table, and I want a mini pet now. I think you have to build it yourself. Does anybody else have one?
I wish, but it sounds like fun. Maybe
Yeah, I
one day.
got one.
Oh
Nice.
yeah?
Yeah, I had to put it together. It comes in as a kit, and then you just solder the pieces. It's not that
Yeah.
bad if you're okay with soldering.
Yeah,
And it
it
works.
was a fun project to put together. I might have to turn. I think I may have to turn off my background.
Yeah, we can't see it when you put it to the screen.
Okay, hold please.
That's a beautiful machine.
No, my plan was to replace the board in there, just take a pet, replace the board, and basically connect it to the existing keyboard and monitor. I haven't done that yet.
Background.
There's the HDMI out.
No, no, it doesn't have that. It has RCA out, I believe,
Okay.
but no, none of this. It doesn't have the HDMI or any other video out.
Are you sharing the screen? Is that what you're doing?
I am trying to disable my background. Does anyone know how to turn the background off on Zoom?
Are you right now using your phone? Are you using
Yeah, I'm using a laptop.
okay, I can't remember how to do it right now on the laptop. I'm just using my phone right now. So.
I can change my background, but how do I turn it off?
Nice. You're sitting on the Council of Elders now.
That's all right. Jedi Council.
Yeah, that's cool.
Um, that doesn't help.
I wonder if you go into one of your settings and backgrounds and effects, if there's an option where you can click on none. Think that would be an option?
Oh, at the bottom left, there's where it says video. There's the microphone and the camera. There's a pointer up, and you get the menu select camera, and then you can choose your virtual background, blur mic background. You see that, Jessica? Bottom left, where the camera is, where the video is.
Let's see, stop video. Oh, here. Video settings. I was just in my video settings. Just blur my background.
Yeah, there's a
That's-
choose virtual background, and then you put none.
Oh, none.
Yeah, there you go. I think we can see your back. Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Good
Okay,
job.
so this is working now. It's my mini pet.
Awesome.
Now,
Beautiful.
Jessica, have you tried putting it into an actual pet, or you don't have an actual pet to put it in?
No, I have a pet 32 actually.
Have you tried putting in the motherboard in there, like the mini pet in there, and connecting it to the CRT of the actual pet?
Yeah, funny story about that. When I bought my pet, and it was non-working at the time, and I was thinking that I was thinking that I bought this mini pet so that I could put it into the pet 4032, but then I actually was able to repair the pet after all, so I didn't have to do that.
But have you tried it? See, I'm wondering, I haven't tried it yet to put it in there and run it off
No,
an actual
no,
CRT.
I haven't. I don't really have a reason to.
Okay.
I mean, I suppose if I had like a pet shell that was damaged, then I would do that. But it actually works really well. This is the case that I got for it. So it keeps it very stable with like the keyboard connected. And this is great for taking to shows and things because it's so portable and
Yep.
a lot easier than lugging around the big old pet.
But that's a chiclet keyboard, though, is it not?
Yeah, it's got a chiclet keyboard
Yeah,
like the
hard to type on
2001.
those things.
I'm trying to figure out how to make my camera not be blurry right now.
Fair enough.
Maybe
Still
bring
blurry.
back your background then. Probably it'll help.
Yeah.
I was just gonna ask that.
You're beautiful either way, so you don't have to worry
No,
about that.
So,
that's not helping.
what is your love of Star Trek?
My love of Star Trek.
Yeah.
I guess I'm not sure I understand the question.
You
Do you want
said
to know
you're
my?
you're a Star Trek fan, right?
Yeah,
You
sure,
had the Star Trek background in your as your background during the conference.
sure. Yeah, well, I guess when I was a teenager, Next Generation was on TV, and I was a fan. I watched it.
Which one? The original or Next Generation?
Next Generation,
Okay.
and then when Deep Space Nine came out, I was pretty into that one for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Those are cool graphics.
yeah, it was a good show. It's pretty good graphics, and I don't know. After that, I kind of stopped watching the later shows.
What are you thinking about doing after light cycles? Do you have any ideas for games?
I have a lot of ideas. Question is like how much time I have available to work on them.
Well, what ideas do you have?
I have a lot of old like basic games that I wrote when I was a kid, and some of those I think might be decent if I convert them to Turbo Rascal and improve the graphics and things.
What kind of games are they?
Let's say I had one that was kind of a dungeon crawler where
Oh, cool.
it was character based game where you would like move your character around a maze and you could like shoot fireballs at monsters and pick up treasure and stuff. That was probably the most fleshed out game that I wrote.
Cool. Does it have a title?
I don't remember what I called it. And
Dungeon
I had
crawler.
another one that was like it was like an Arkanoid clone,
Oh, cool.
but written in BASIC, it was very slow. And
Anybody else have any questions?
Are any of your older games available online right now?
yeah, absolutely. I'll paste the link to my itch.io page.
Thank you.
Sure. So these are all free to download. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot on there so far. There's several versions of Light Cycles. There's some demos that I wrote, very simple demos, and a SID
Thank you.
tuner program just to experiment with SID sound effects and things.
Marcio wants to know any plans to explore programming for TED series, +4, C16, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I intend to port Light Cycles to the +4.
Sweet.
Yeah, so whenever I finish the DX version, then I'll probably port that to the +4. I think the extended color palette could be used really well for that game.
Exciting. Well, thank you, Jessica, for joining us.
Yeah.
Um,
Thanks for having
everybody
me.
attending Commodore the Next Generation. Captain's Log. Supplemental. Peace, everybody. Thank you for
Okay.
joining.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Thank you so much, Nico.
You're
Stay
welcome.
well,
Thank
everyone.
you.
And take care, and we'll see you again
Take
soon.
care. We'll see you again. Thank you,
Cheers.
Jessica.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Take care. See you soon.
Thank you, Janika.